Hello everyone, today we're learning מציעא דף ד'. Let's go. אלא, second line down, דף ד' עמוד א'. אלא אמר רב פאפא, אסי מגלגול שבוע דעד אחד. מה לגלגול שבוע דעד אחד? שכן שבוע גוררת שבוע, תאמר בעדים דממון כמחייבי? פיו יוכיח, מה לפיו שכן אינה בהכחשה? עד אחד יוכיח שישנו בהכחשה ומחייבו שבוע, מה אלה עד אחד שכן על מה שמעיד הוא נשבע, תאמר בעדים שעל מה שכפר הוא נשבע, פיו יוכיח וחזר הדין לא ראי זה כראי זה, לא ראי זה כראי זה, הצד השווה שבהם שעל ידי טענה וכפירה הם באים ונשבע, אף אני אביא עדים שעל ידי טענה וכפירה הם באים ונשבע, מה להצד השווה שבהם שכן לא הוחזק כפרן, תאמר בעדים שכן הוחזק כפרן. ובעדים מי הוחזק כפרן, ואמר רב איתי ברבין, אמר רב חיסדא, כופר במלווה כשר לעדות בפיקדון פסול לעדות. אלא פריך אחי, מה לצד השווה שבהם שכן אינם בתורת הזמה? תאמר בעדים שישנם בתורת הזמה, או לא קשיא רב חייא תורת הזמה לא פריך. So the Gemara is a continuation of the Gemara from the Shia before. Rab Chia said that Chiddush, the like Moide b'Miktsas, Reuven claims from Shimon 100 and Shimon agrees on 50, he has to make a shvur on the other 50. The same if Reuven claims from Shimon 100 and Reuven says, I don't owe you anything, and the Eidim testify and say he owes 50, so on the other 50, you have to make a shvur. And Rab Chia said, I know this din from a kal v'chomer from Piv. And we asked the kash on that kal v'chomer. So we said, we learn it from Eid Echad. And then we asked the kash on Eid Echad. So now the Gemara is saying, Omar Rab Papa, I'll tell you where Rab Chia knows his din from. Says Rab Papa, you know where Rab Chia knows his din from? From Gilgul Shvuah Eid Echad. Meaning, if Reuven comes to Shimon and he's claiming from Shimon 100 and he has one aid to be made on that, so Shimon needs to make a shvur on that 100. And now if Reuven was claiming from Shimon also a different separate claim, you owe me 100 and also you owe me this vessel I gave you to keep. So because he makes a shvur on the 100, we megalgal roll over a shvur to the other thing that he's claiming. So says Rab Chia, that's where we learn, if you're a papa, that's where we learn my din, that Eidim also mechayev shvur on the other 50. Because we're saying like the follows, like Eid Echad could be mechayev a shvur, and also you could roll the shvur on to something else. So also the Eidim that mechayev 50, the mechayev momon on 50, when Reuven claims from Shimon 100 and Eidim say they owe him 50, so he has to pay 50. So the other 50, you also roll shvur on to the other 50, like Eid Echad, and two Eidim are stronger than Eid Echad. So if already Eid Echad can do that, so for sure two Eidim. On that the Gemara asks, no, it doesn't make sense. By Gilgul Shvur, you have first one shvur, and then you roll another shvur. But here, you don't have a first shvur, because on the first 50 the Eidim are made, you have to pay. You don't mechayev a shvur, you need to pay money. So it doesn't make sense. Says the Gemara, okay, so Piv Yochiach. I learn it from Gilgul Shvur together with Piv, together with Moide b'Miktsas. So, like Piv, when you're Moide on 50, you have to make a shvur on the other 50. Even though on the first 50 there's no shvurs, you have to pay, but the other 50 you have to make a shvur. So also two Eidim is the same thing. Together with, we learn that from Piv together with Eid Echad. And that the Gemara asks, no, but you can't learn from Piv like we said before, because Piv is stronger than Eidim, because Piv you can't contradict. Even if you have like chosh, if someone says I owe Shimon money, and there is Eidim that say not the same, they say it's not true, he still has to pay, so Piv is stronger than Eidim. So the Gemara Eid Echad yichiach, no, I'll bring a raya from Eid Echad that you could be makrish, and afilu ochi is mechayev shvur. And that the Gemara asks, no, Eid Echad, you made on what you nishba, you're not made on the other 50. If Eid Echad says Shimon owes money, so now you make a shvur on something they never spoke about. Says the Gemara, no, Piv Yichiach, but Piv is Mechayev on the other 50, he's Moide on 50, and Mechayev shvur on the other 50. And therefore, the weakness of Piv, the Eino Bak Choshev Azoma, that means it's a strength, that it's stronger, we learn from Eid Echad. And Eid Echad, the Yeshno Bak Choshev, you can ask a kasha that the shvur is on what you made, not what you made. Piv Yichiach. And then it says the Gemara, Chozer Adin, so we have two things to learn from. It can't be that because of Akosha, because Eid Echad is Bakosha. It can't be because it's you nishban something else, because Piv is nishban something else. So the equal thing between them two, that they both come al yedei taino kfira, that Reuven's turn from Shimon, bein by Eid Echad, bein by Piv. It doesn't matter if Reuven has a 1 aid, or it doesn't matter if Shimon admitted to 50. And at the end of the day, he makes a shvur. So I learned from those two cases, to 2 aidim, that they also mechayev shvur on the other 50. So l'chor, we know where Rab Chia learns his din from Piv together with Eid Echad. Said the Gemara Kasha, no, I'll tell you. There's a big difference between 2 Eidim and Piv and Eid Echad. Why? Because when Reuven claims from Shimon and Shimon admits to 50, Shimon didn't become a liar. And when Reuven, because he didn't lie, we don't have any Eidim that he's a liar. And when Reuven claims from Shimon and Reuven has Eid Echad, also Shimon, we don't hold that Shimon's a liar. Even that Shimon is saying that he doesn't owe anything, and the Eid says he does owe, it's 1 against 1. We don't believe the Eid only to Mechayev Shvur, but we don't make Shimon into a shakran. Masha'inkin, in our case, where Reuven says Shimon owes me 100, and Shimon said I don't owe you anything, and then Eidim came and said he owes 50. So in those 50, Shimon became a shakran. So we can't believe him to make a shvur on the other 50. So how could we learn from Piv and Eid Echad that with Eid doesn't become a liar? Masha'inkin, with Eidim he becomes a liar. Said the Gemara on that teretz, no, also by Eidim you don't become a liar. Because Rav Idi Bar Avin says in the name of Rav Chisda, that if Reuven claims from Shimon, you owe me Shimon 100, and Shimon says I don't owe you anything, and then Eidim come before Shimon made any shvur or anything and says no, Shimon does owe, so Shimon doesn't come apostle Eidos. And the reason why, even though that he lied, because we say the reason why he lied, he wants to pay later, because he used this money that he got as a loan, and now he doesn't have the money, and he wants to pay later. He wasn't really trying to steal it, he was planning to pay later. So he doesn't become a shakran and we could trust him. Masha'inkin is kosher leidus. Masha'inkin, if Reuven comes to Shimon and says, I deposited you by you money, not to use, just to keep for me, and you owe it to me, and Shimon says, I don't owe you anything, and then Eidim come and say he does owe, then Shimon becomes posel eidus, because why didn't he pay it back? That money was not meant to be used, it was only a deposit. And Rashi explains that we're going to explain later on that it's talking about where the Eidim is saying that the money is still in a safe. So why did he lie? He tried stealing that money, so he becomes posel eidus. But over here, when we talk about Alvor, not Picardon, he doesn't become posel eidus. He can't tell me Piv and Eid Echad, he doesn't become posel eidus, because to Eidim he also doesn't come posel eidus. Because we just say he's mishtamutika mishtamet. So the Gemara have a different question. That Einam b'Torah Sazoma, the Reuven, the Amoide b'Miktas, you can't say Kasha Zomam and say, oh, you were with me at that day when you admitted to, and therefore you have to pay, because there's no Kasha Zomam b'Moide or Doas Piv. And also, if Reuven claimed from Shimon and he has 1 aid, and then 2 aidim come and say that this aid was with us in that day, where he's testifying about somewhere else, we're not going to say this Eid Echad has to pay what he was trying to do, because the Eid Echad was only Mechayev Shvur, no moment, so there's no Azoma for him. Masha'inkin be'edim who are made, who are testifying about something that happened, and then another group of Eidim came and said that in that day they were with us somewhere else, they will need to pay what they tried making the other person pay. So Eidim are more chomadik, they more, you could see they have a special chumrah, so maybe we don't trust them to make a shvua. On that the Gemara says, no, Teres Hazoma or Abchia, Teres Hazoma loy porich. Because Eidechod, if you mazim him, his Eidus is cancelled, even though they don't say Kasha Zoman, because you can't do Kasha Zoman on a shvua. But because of Eidus is cancelled, he is considered Muzam, he is considered cancelled as Eidus. So it's the same thing like two Eidim. And therefore, there's no difference between Eid Echad and two Eidim by Azoma, and Reb Chia doesn't ask this Kasha of Teres Azoma, and the Gemara comes to Maskana that Reb Chia's source, the Kalvachoyma, where he learns that two Eidim are Mechayev Shvuah, if they made on 50, that you'll be Chayev Shvuah on the other 50, you learn it from Piv together from Eid Echad. Tzedek Gemara weiter. Ela dekaamar v'tanatuna midami atam lamalveit lesaade lalo velet lesaade delo masik velo midi dia velesaade lalo vedelo masik vlei velo midi lo bai rabchia leishtabuya achi kechidan anan saade bahai vafulo achi mishtabi ela ki itmar v'tanatuna idach de rabchia itmar. אמר רב חייא, מנה לי בידך, אבל לא אומר אין לך בידי אלא נון זוז והילך חייב. מה טעמה? הילך נמי כמודה מקצת הטענה דמי. ותנא תונא שניים אוחזים בטלית, והאחה כבן דתפיס הנצא דדמא דתפיס הילך הוא, וקטני ישבע. ורב ששת אמר הילך פטור. מה טעמה? כבן דאמר להילך הנן זוז דקמודה בגביו כמן דנקית לאומילווה דמי. והנה 50 הולו מודה, הלקח לקה הודעה מקצת הטענה. ולרב ששת קשה מתניתין, אמר לך רב ששת מסניתין תקנת חכמים היא, והידך, אם תקנת חכמים היא, מי הוא? היא אמרת בישלם מדאורייתא אלא חייב, מתקני רבנן שבועה כאין דאורייתא. אלא היא אמרת מדאורייתא אלך פטור, מתקני רבנן שבועה דלת ככבותה בדאורייתא. So the Gemara continues and says the following. Now that we understand where Reb Chia knows his Kalvachoyim from, there was another thing Reb Chia told us. And what was that? Reb Chia said, V'tana tuna, you know where we see the source, we know where we learn it from, but what's the source? Where do we see a Mishnah that says, my din, that if Reuven claims from Shimon, and Shimon says, I don't owe you anything, and Eidim come and say, you owe 50, they has to make another shvur on the other 50, no, another shvur, a shvur on the other 50, and only pay the 50 that the Eidim say. He says, you know what, you know it from our Mishnah. Because our Mishnah, people came to Bezdin, Reuven and Shimon holding a talis. Reuven's claiming from Shimon, he says, it's all mine. And the Chayra, that's how Reuven's holding the talis. It shows that Reuven is muchzik in 50. It's like Eidim saying that he owns 50. And we could see Shimon has to make a shvur on the other 50. So that's a raya to his din, from a Mishnah to Reb Chia's din. On that the Gemara asks Akasha. Does it make sense? Why? Because if a different case, Reuven claims from Shimon 100, and the Eidim come and say, and Shimon says, I don't owe anything, and the Eidim come and say, yes, you owe him 50. On the other 50, the Eidim say, you don't owe him. So for sure, Reb Chia would say that Shimon doesn't need to make a shvur on the other 50 because he has Eidim like him. He only has to pay 50. So also by us in the Mishnah, like Reuven has Eidim that he's holding on to it, no, literally Eidim, and that he's holding is like Eidim, and that's a proof that 50 is his. But on the other 50, on the other 50% of this talis, Shimon has Eidim because he's also holding on to it. So it's like Eidim saying that another group of Eidim, it's as if they're saying that 50 belongs to Shimon. So for sure Shimon wouldn't need to make a shvur. So it doesn't make any sense. The Mishnah is a whole different case. Where you bring your raya from the Mishnah, and the Mishnah you have Eidim for both of them. Says the Gemara, you know what? When Reb Chia said V'tona tuna, I bring your raya from the Mishnah, he was talking to bring a raya from the Mishnah to another din that Reb Chia said. Not the din that we just said, a different din that Reb Chia said. Why is that? The Reb Chia said such a case. A different din. Reuven comes to Shimon and he says, you owe me 100. And Shimon admits to 50. So normally Shimon will have to pay the 50 and make a shvur on the other 50. But in this case, Shimon admits to 50 and it says, here, take it. It's yours wherever it is. Take it back. Says Reb Chia, even though that Shimon's paying it back and giving it him back straight away, it's called Heilach. Still, says Reb Chia, Shimon needs to make a shvur. Because there was a tzad to say, and we're going to see Rav Shesha says like that later on, that because Shimon, the 50 he's admitting, he's as if he said, take it wherever it is. It's as if he paid back already Reuven those 50. He said, take it wherever it is. And therefore, on those 50, there's no discussion. It's as if he gave it back. So why is there discussion? Only on the other 50. On the other 50, he's koifa koil. He doesn't admit to anything. He says, no, I don't owe you any of that 50. And koifa koil is no chayav shvur. So therefore, Rav Sheshes is going to argue later on and say, heilach, that's called heilach. Your potter, it's not considered moide miktas. Rav Chia argues and says, even heilach is considered moide b'miktas. And he chayav shvur on the other 50. And on that din, Rab Chia says, I bring you right from the Mishnah because Reuven says the whole talis is mine, and as if he has Eidim on the 50 that he's holding, and it's Eilach, it's by him, it's already by him, and Shimon still has to make a shvur on the other 50, so we could see that Eilach is chayav a shvur. Said the Gemara. So that's a Tanatuna, that's where we bring the Raya. Said the Gemara, Rav Shesha says, heilach is potter. What's the reason? Like we explained, because he said this 50 is yours wherever it is, it's like he returned it, and the other 50 is koifa koil, and he's potter for making a shvur. Ask the Gemara lechera, it's a kasha from Rav Shesha, on Rav Shesha from our Mishnah. Then our Mishnah we see a case of heilach, because the 50 that he's holding, it's like it's already his, and we still say Shimon has to make a shvur on the other 50. Says the Gemara, it's no kasha Rav Sheshes from the Mishnah, because Rav Sheshes said the Mishnah is a whole different reason. It's a takona that shlo yiyeh echod, like Rabbi Yochanan said on Daf Gimel Amud Aleph, that our Mishnah is the reason is it's a takonas chachomim to make a shvur, that if you won't make a shvur, when Reuven's going in the street with a talis, Shimon is going to grab onto that talis and come to Bezdin and won't need to make a shvur, and they're going to split it between Reuven and Shimon, and he's going to be a ganev, and Bezdin's going to give it to him. So that people shouldn't do that all the time. Bezdin will metakin, Chachomim will metakin, that they'll need to make a shvur, and a person won't make a shvur l'sheker. That's why we'll save from this story happening, that someone should just grab on. Says Rav Sheshes, our Mishnah, each one, Reuven has 8 into his 50, Shimon has 8 into his 50, it's nothing to do with Moedim Miktas, and afilu ochi chayiv shvur. The reason is because it's takonos chachomim. So says the Gemara lecher Rab Chia, who says, I have a raya from the Mishnah, doesn't he agree that it's a takonos chachomim, because it's very different. Each one has Eidim on his 50, and everyone admits that if Reuven claims from Shimon, and Shimon disagrees, and then Eidim come and say Shimon owes 50, but 50 doesn't owe, that Shimon doesn't have to make a shvur. So why did our Mishnah make a shvur? It must be because takonos chachomim. So what's Rab Chia's raya betona tuna? Says the Gemara, I'll tell you what Rab Chia's raya is. Rab Chia's raya is the following. If mi'ikad in midoraisa, in a case of heilach, where I say take it back on 50 and it's yours wherever it is, yichayv a shvur. So therefore, Rabbanon would be mitakin a shvur even in the case where midoraisa no chayv a shvur, because both people have eidim, but it's doime to a shvur doraisa of a heilach. But if heilach no chayv a shvur doraisa, so in such a case of the Mishnah where it's heilach, even the Rabbanon wouldn't be mitakin, wouldn't make up a shvur that doesn't exist, even a similar case in doraisa. And therefore, Rab Chia says, I have a raya, since the Mishnah says the shvur the Rabbanon. But it must be that it's similar to the Oraisa, the similar of Heilach, so we could see Heilach is Chayev. The Gemara doesn't say what Rav Sheshes says to that. Rav Sheshes probably will say that, no, even though that there's no shvur similar to Oraisa, Rabbanon made a shvur, that person shouldn't grab the other person's talis. Said the Gemara, the last word on Amud Aleph, Meitive. 2 דינרים. מלווה אומר 5 ולווה אומר 3. רב שמעון בן אלעזר אומר אוהל ועודה מקצת הטענה היא שווה. רבי עקיבא אומר אינו אלא כמשיב אבדה ופטור. תני מיעט רב שמעון בן אלעזר אומר אוהל ועודה מקצת הטענה היא שווה. תמה דאמר 3 או 2 פטור והאישתר דקמודה באילך ושמע מינה הילך פטור. לא לעולם המה לך 2 חייב. והיידק תני 3 להפוק כמדרי רבי עקיבא. תמה משיב אבדה והוא פטור. כלומר שמלן דמודה מקצת הטענה וחייב. יחי רב שמעון בן אלעזר אומר אוהל ועודה מקצת הטענה היא שווה, אף זה היא שווה מבא אלה. אלא לעולם 2 פטור. ואילך חייב. ושייני אחד דקמוד מסייע לשטרה. אינמי משום דאב ולשטר שיבוד קרקעות ואין נשבעים על כפירת שיעבוד קרקעות. So the Gemara asks the kasha over here. We said over here we have a machloikes that between Rab Chia and Rav Sheshes, what is Heilach Chayav or Heilach Spotter? When Reuven claims from Shimon and Shimon admits to 50, but he says here take it back straight away, doesn't he have to make a shvur on the other 50 or not? Rab Chia says he does, and Rav Sheshes says he doesn't. So the Gemara wants to ask a kasha on Rab Chia who says you do need to make a shvur. What's the kasha? From a case where when there is a document saying that Shimon owes Reuven sloim or dinrim, pounds or dollars, different types of coins, and it doesn't say how many of those coins. It says Shimon owes coins, pounds, or Shimon owes dollars. It doesn't say how many. Now, the Malva Reuven says to Shimon, you owe me 5. It says pounds, you owe me 5 pounds or $5. And the Loiva Shimon says, no, I only owe you 3. So Rab Shimon also says, since he's Moedim Miktas, Reuven's claiming 5 and Shimon's saying 3, so he has to make a shvur on those 2 that he doesn't admit to. And Rabbi Akiva says, no, since the shtar, we'll see a second in more detail, but Rabbi Akiva says no, he's Meishiv Aveda, meaning he could have said 2, like the shtar, normally when it says pounds, we say miut rabim, it means 2. And he's admitted to extra 1 and said 3. He's like a Meishiv Aveda. And by a Meishiv Aveda, there's no din of Moide B'miktas. And you're potter from a shvur. Says the Gemara, Lefi Rab Shimon also, the reason why he chayav a shvur, because he said 3, because Shimon said 3. But if Shimon would only admit to 2, when Reuven would claim 5 and Shimon would say I only owe 2, he'd be potter. Only by 3 Rab Shimon also says he's chayav. And the Gemara understands why would he be potter? Because 2 or type is in the shtar, because when it says pounds, a mere trabim is 2, so it means 2 pounds. And something that's written on the shtar, when you have a shtar of alva, you can claim from karka, you can claim from the person Shimon's fields, and Shimon's fields, wherever they are, they are. So it's like heilach. It's like heilach. It's yours wherever it is. So Reuven's claiming 5 and Shimon says 2. So Shimon's potter, why? L'chor is moide b'miktas on 2. No, because there's a shtar over here, and shtar is karkois, and karkois is like heilach. So we could see heilach is potter. That's why 3 chayav, because the third one there's no shtar, but 2 you potter because 2 there's a shtar and it's heilach. So we could see heilach is potter. Says the Gemara, no. Really, 2 is also chayav. If you're Rab Shimon ben Loza, and you know why? Rab Shimon Loza said the case about 3 chayav because he wanted to argue with Rabbi Akiva. To say Rabbi Akiva says 3 you call the Meishiv Aveda, says Rab Shimon ben Loza, no, even 3 you're not considered the Meishiv Aveda. You considered a Moide B'miktas and you have to make a shvur. But really also 2 you'll be chayav a shvur because Eilach is also chayav. Says the Gemara, if so, if Rab Shimon Loza was talking about 3, but also by 2 he holds the same, doesn't make any sense. Rab Shimon Loza should say, also in the case of 3 chayav shvur, not in the case of 3 chayav shvur, that's mashma in the case you know chayav shvur. Because Rav Shimon Elazar said that in the case of 3, chayav shvua, but if also in the case of 3, not only 2, also 3, Rav Shimon Elazar should say, af shalosh chayav shvua. But since he just says shalosh chayav shvua, is mashma tuyi potter, so why tuyi potter? Because it's heilach. So we can see heilach is potter, so we still have a kasha on Rab Chia. Says the Gemara, no, really, 2 you also potter. Really 2 you're potter. And 3 you're chayev. But not because the reason why we were saying that 3 you're chayev, because you're moidem mimiktas and 2 you're potter, because you're moidem mimiktas of heilach and heilach is potter. No, I'll tell you a whole different raya why you're potter, a whole different reason why you're potter by 2. And the reason is because the shtar that says pounds, it says shkolim, it says dinrim, sloim or dinrim, is mashma only 2 because miut rabim, when you have rabim, and it doesn't say exactly how much, we take on that, it means 2. So it says in the shtar that Shimon owes dinrim, and miut dinrim means 2. So if Shimon says 2, he's potter, not because of heilach, because a different reason is because the shtar is proving what Shimon says. It's like if Reuben claims from Shimon 100, and Eidim and Shimon admits to 50, and Eidim say, yeah, he owes only 50. For sure, you won't have to make a shvur on the other 50. So here, the shtar is like those Eidim who are made; they only owes 2, and that's why by 2 you'll be potter, not because heilach, but 3, then you're moed b'mitzvahs and chayev. So there's no raya against Rab Chia. So the Gemara, another teretz. You know why by 2 you're potter really heilach is chayev, but you know why 2 you're potter not because you're heilach, because it's karkois, like we said, there's a shibud from karkois on 2, because the shtar says 2 is mashma 2, and on karkois you don't make a shvur, you only make shvur on metaltalin, there's a din that you don't make a shvur on karkois, and that's why you don't make a shvur, not because of heilach, because it's karkois, and karkois you don't make a shvur. Let's see the Gemara weiter. Ike de motiv miseifa, Rabbi Akiva omer ein אלא כמשיב אבדה או פטור. תמה דאמר 3 או 2 חייב. או שטר כיוון דכמוידי בי כאילך דמי. שמע מינה אילך חייב. לא אילך ממלך 2 נמי פטור. והי דקטני 3, להפוקי מדרב שמעון אלעזר, דאמר מוידי במקצת התנא הווה וחייב. כמשמע לן דמשיב אבדה והוא פטור. הכי נמי מסתברא דאיסל כדאיתך. 2 חייב, ב3 איך ייפטר לרבי עקיבא, ההי ארומה כמה הרים, סבר, אי אמינא 2 בעיני השתבועה. אמא 3 דווי כמשב אבדה ויפטר, אלא שמע מינא 2 נמי פטור. אלא קשיא לרב חייא, שהענייתם דכמסייע לשטרה, אינמי משום דאבה לשטר שעבוד קרקעות ונשבעים כפירת שעבוד קרקעות. So the Gemara says, we asked the kasha from the machlokes of Shimon ben Elazar and Rabbi Akiva from the case of Shimon ben Elazar. Says the Gemara that some people ask the kasha not from Shimon ben Elazar, from Rabbi Akiva. And what's the kasha? Rabbi Akiva says that when Reuven claimed from Shimon 5, and the shtar said dinrim, and Shimon said 3, so he's potter because he's Meishav Aveda. But if he would say 2, he'd be chayev. Why is that? Why chayev? On those 2 there's a shtar saying the same, and it's heilach because it's karkois. So why chayev by 2? Elamai, we could see that heilach is chayev. So it's a kasha not on Rab Chia like before. Now it's a kasha on Rab Sheshis who says heilach is potter. We could see heilach is chayev because the Rabbi Akiva says 3 is potter, but 2 is chayev. Why chayev by 2? It's heilach. Elamai, heilach is chayev. Says the Gemara Teretz, no. Really 2 is also potter. And you know why Rabbi Akiva said 3? Because he wants to argue Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar. Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar says 2 you potter like we said before. But 3 is chayev. Says Rabbi Akiva that even 3 is potter. Because you're Meishav Aveda, because he could have said 2 and he'd be potter. Because the shtar proves like him. So now that he said 3 on his own behalf, he gave that 3rd one back. So you're potter to make a shvua because you like a Meishav Aveda. And the Gemara tells you, I'll bring you a raya that Lefira Be'akiva to you also potter. Because if 2 you'd be chayiv and 3 you're potter, it doesn't make sense that you should be potter by 3. Why not? Because Reuven comes in this case and claims from Shimon 5, and Shimon says 3. Shimon might be cheating. He knows if he says 2, he'll be chayiv a shvua. So he says, I'll be clever. I'll say 3 and I'll be like a Meishav Aveda and I'll patter myself. I'll trick Bezdin and then I'll patter myself a shvua. I'll pay 1 extra and I won't need to make a shvua on the rest. And that doesn't make sense that he could trick Bezdin. So it must be that 2 you also potter. And therefore your proper Meishav Aveda, they said 3, because I could have said 2 and now I said 3, then I'm mechayiv myself an extra 1 and I didn't need to do that. And 2 will be potter, so 3 is also potter because I'm a Meishav Aveda. Says the Gemara, if so, it's a kasha on Rab Chia. Why? Because Rabbi Akiva says that 2 you're potter. Why 2 you're potter? It must be because Heilach is potter. Says the Gemara, no, the reason why you're potter by 2 is like what we said before, for the 2 reasons. Or because the shtar is proving that you only owe 2. That's what says in the shtar, that you only owe 2. That's 1 teretz. It's not because of its heilach, and the other reason it's because it's karkois, and on karkois you don't make a shvua, not because it's heilach, because on karka you don't make a shvua. Tell the Gemara weiter. Mativ Rab Marzut Rab Breder Rab Nachman, Tanu kelim bekarkaot, Odu bekelim וכפר בקרקעות, הודה בקרקעות וכפר בכלים פטור, הודה מקצת קרקעות פטור, מקצת כלים חייב. תמה דכלים וקרקעות, כלכלה בת שבועי, או כלים וכלים דומי כלים וקרקעות חייב. היחידה מלאו דאמר לה הילך ושמה מן ההילך חייב. לא עולה ממלך כלים וכלים נמי פטור. ועוד הקטני כלים וקרקעות, הכמה שמלן הודה מקצת כלים חייב אף על הקרקעות. מהי כמה שמלן זוקקים? תנינה. זוקקים הנכסים שאין להם אחריות הנכסים שיש להם את הנכסים שיש להם אחריות להישבע עליהם. החייקה, אתם גרר נספה. ולמאן דאמר הילך פטור, המאי צריך קרא למעוטי קרקע משבועה, או כל קרקע הילכו. אמר לך, צריך קרא, איכד דחפר בורות צריכין ומערות. אינמי, איכד דתענו כלים וקרקעות, והודה בכלים וכפר בקרקעות. So the Gemara is over here bringing a kasha from Marzutra, the son of Rav Nachman. A kasha on the Shitta who holds the Eilach is potter, a kasha on Rav Sheshes. So we know already from before that on Karka you don't make a shvur. And also we know that Karka is similar to Eilach because Karka, if I admit on Karka that I owe someone Karka, it's his wherever it is. You don't need to go and give it to him. It's wherever the field is, it's his. So what's the case over there that we're asking the kasha is? The case is that Reuven claimed from Shimon, you owe me a piece of land and you also owe me a watch. So it doesn't matter if Shimon admitted on the watch and said, I owe you the watch, but I don't owe you the piece of land. Or it doesn't matter if he admitted to the piece of land and said, I owe you the piece of land, but I don't owe you the watch. You don't need to make a shvur. Because you don't make a shvur on karka or because of karka. That's case number 1. If he admitted, he claimed to him, you owe me a piece of land and a watch, and he admitted on half of the land and disagreed on the other half of the land and the watch, he's still potem a shvur because the karka can't be mechayev a shvur. But if he claimed the piece of land and the watch, let's say 2 watches, and Shimon admitted to 1 watch, but said on the other watch, on the karka, I don't owe you. So in that case, he's moide b'miktsas on metaltelim, and also he's koifa b'metaltelim, so he has to make a shvur, because it's a moide b'miktsas dika case. Says Marzutra, this holding is dafka because he claimed a watch on karka. But if it was a watch on karka, a watch on a watch, similar to a watch on karka. And what's that case? On 1 watch he admits, and the other, and he says, Heilach, it's yours b'chol mokim shehem like karka. And the other watch, he says, I don't owe it to you. He will need to make a shvur. because that's similar to, because it says over there, especially a karka and metaltalim. Then you don't make a shvur, but if it's metaltalim and metaltalim, similar to metaltalim and karka, you will make a shvur. And what's the case? Heilach. So we could see that heilach is chayev, and it's a kasha on Rav Sheishes. So the Gemara Teretz, no, really, kelim and kelim, where it's doimet to kelim and karkois of the case of heilach, you'll also be potter. So the why over there do we tell you the case? The Chayr should tell you a bigger chiddush, even kelim and kelim, you'll be, when you're moide b'miktzas and you say heilach, you're potter. Should tell you that case. Why are you telling me the chiddush of karka and metaltalim? And that the Gemara says, this is the chiddush is that in a case where Reuven claims from Shimon, you owe me a piece of land and 2 watches, and Shimon admits about 1 watch, not only has to make a shvur on the other watch, you also have to make a shvur on the land. Because once you already make a shvur on metaltalim, you also mechayev a shvur on karkois, even though that normally we know you don't make a shvur on karkois, but if you started already make a shvur on metaltalim, you mechayev a shvur on karkois. So that's a chiddush over there. On that, Gemara asks a kasha, if that's a chiddush of zoikikim, it's called zoikikim, that once you make a shvur on karkois, on metaltalim, you make a shvur also on karkois, that's a Mefursha Mishnah. That zoikikim anechosim she'einoim achrayis, as anechosim she'esh loim achrayis l'shov aleim. But if you have exactly this case, it's a Mefursha Mishnah in Kiddushin. Yeah, it's a Mefursha Mishnah in Kiddushin that tells you this. Why do we need this other Mishnah that we just learned now? Before we have a clear Mishnah. So the Gemara, no. Really the Mishnah that we learned just before, that's the ikka source, that's the main source where the Torah, where Chazal mechadesh, that you can make a shvur of zoikikim on karka. And the Mishnah in Kiddushin, where it also says the same din, that's just by the way, because it's not even in shvur, it's the main Mishnah that we learned about, where he claimed karka and metaltalim, or metaltalim and karka, etc., that we learned from there that you could sometimes make a shvur on a karka. That's the main source of the din, because it's written in Shavuos. The other Mishnah is just by the way in Kiddushin, because we said a similar din about karkois, that you koine metaltalim agav karka, so we said you make a shvur on karka agav metaltalim, but that's not the main source. Says the Gemara, lefir shitas Rav Sheishes, that heilach is potter. Why do we need a special limud in the Torah from a klal uprat to tell you that on a karka you don't make a shvur? Anyway, you don't make a shvur on a karka. Why not? Because it's heilach. If Reuven came to Shimon and said, you owe me a piece of land, and Shimon admitted on half the piece of land, so the Torah tells you a special chiddush that you don't make a shvur on the other half. Teipukle, you don't make a shvur because it's heilach. It's shelcha b'chol mokem shein. Why do you need a special klal uprat to tell you the din about karka? Teipukle midin heilach. On that, the Gemara has 2 terutzim. I'll tell you why you need the special chiddush of the Torah. The first teretz is, in a case where Reuven comes to Shimon and says, you owe me this piece of land, and you ruined that piece of land, you dug over their holes, and you built, you messed up that piece of land, you dug tunnels, and Shimon admits to half the piece of land. So over there, it's not heilach, because it's not back to Reuven wherever it is, because Reuven needs to pay extra, or Reuven has to fix this piece of land to give it back the way it was before he stole. So it's not heilach. So l'chora you should be chayav a shvur. Tells the Torah a chiddush on karkois you don't make a shvur. That's a case where the Torah needs to tell you a chiddush. Inami, another teretz. In a case where Reuven came to Shimon and said, you owe me a piece of land and a watch, and Shimon admitted on the watch. So l'chora on the watch it's not heilach. So l'chora you should have to make a shvur on the land. Tells you the Torah nothing to do with heilach. On a piece of land you don't make a shvur. And that's why you need the chiddush of a Torah in a case where there's no heilach. Thank you very much.